All right, why don't we go ahead and get started? I see that we're up to 10 attendees. We have looks like 9 folks on our panel here with us, some BLM folks and such. So why don't we go to the next slide, please? So let's talk about the agenda. This is a Zoom webinar hosted by Dudek and presented by the BLM. This meeting is scheduled from 6 until 8 o'clock this evening. It's a BLM presentation, questions and answer session, and a public input session. Please be respectful of all parties on the call. We appreciate that. Next slide, please. Introduction. Let's go through some introductions here. I am Greg Helseth. I'm a branch chief with the Renewable Energy Office here at the State Office of Nevada. With us from the BLM is, let's see here, Nick Pay. Is a field manager with the Southern Nevada office, the prompt field manager. He's representing the Southern Nevada district office. Mark Slaughter is a supervisory biologist, also with the Southern Nevada office. And Kirsten Cannon is also with the Southern Nevada office. She's our public affairs officer this evening. Brian Bazzani is also out there. He's our planning and environmental coordinator and you'll likely hear his voice later in the presentation. He's with our team here at the state office as a planning and environmental coordinator. And Quinn May is out there. She is a realty specialist on the renewable energy team here at the state office. So she's out there, and Tim Vandervoot is our archaeologist on the team here at the state office for the BLM Nevada. EDF, could you come on and introduce your folks out there?
Sure. My name is Levi Cox. I'm the project manager for this Bonanza Solar Project.
Yeah, and hi, I'm Devin Muto, Senior Development Director for the EDF's West Region, oversee our development in Nevada and California.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for coming on and introducing yourselves. So let's go to the next slide here. The variance workflow process. The first part of this process is the Solar Programmatic Environmental Impact Statement from 2012. It designated solar energy zones, variance areas, and solar projects are considered on a case-by-case basis in exclusion areas. That tiers into what happens is we'll end up with a standard form 299 in a plan of development submitted to the BLM by an applicant. Then we'll go through the variance evaluation. We'll make some, we are here, sticker, we're down in the public and tribal and agency input section of this process. From there, it goes on to the Nevada State Director for a concurrence. He'll make a recommendation to the BLM Director, that's John Raby. And then the BLM Director makes the final determination whether to accept or reject the application. That's fairly simple version of how the variance workflow process works. So we're over at that yellow indicator. That's where we're at right now with the public meetings and such. If we go to the next slide. What the variance process is not. It's not a major federal action under the National Environmental Policy Act, otherwise known as NEPA. It's not an undertaking under the National Historic Preservation Act, and it does not trigger compliance with the Endangered Species Act. Those are what variance is not. So it's a very high level version of this is the project all the way up to the BLM Director. I will now turn it over to EDF for the next slides. Those will be 6, 7, and 8. If you could take that away, Levi, that would be great.
Yep. For those not familiar with EDF Renewables, we're one of the largest renewable energy developers in North America. 20 gigawatts of wind, solar, and storage under our belt. Projects developed throughout US, Canada, and Mexico. And two, not only are we a developer, but we're an owner operator as well. So most of those assets that we have developed, we still own and operate them. Next slide, please. This here's an overview of the experience we have in the West. This is showing kind of the West region of EDF's team. And so you can see there on the map, some of that's down in Southern California. Some of our original experience started off with first generation wind farms. And so from that, the team has grown. We've developed some 30+ utility scale projects. Over the next 3 years, we're looking to construct approximately 1,000 megawatts of projects. And the pipeline between now and 2030 is roughly 10 gigawatts. And so you can see that list of projects there that we've developed and built in the last 5 years. Significant experience in Nevada, California. And so the question that we get on a regular basis with a lot of our projects is, why is this site favorable? Why is solar here? This particular site has favorable topography, and it's very close to where the planned infrastructure has been constructed. The solar energy resource in Southern Nevada is good. We all know that. And then two, we look at the substation. That innovation substation there, originally put in place by Valley Electric Association, was originally constructed to harvest some of this renewable energy from the federal lands. So this project is sited within close proximity to that substation, and that substation has capacity. And so we think about it, we see the news, especially this week, it's timely. We see the heat waves, we see the grids at their max. It's important to get these renewable projects in the ground, as these heat waves are bound to continue with global warming, and these kind of sites, favorable sites, are getting to be less and less available. So back to you, Greg.
Thank you for that. Appreciate. So let's go into a project overview for the folks, our attendees here. We have a map here. So the site is entirely on BLM solar variance lands designated by the 2012 solar PEIS. The application area is not within a right-of-way exclusion area under the 98 Las Vegas Resource Management Plan. And the BLM received the application, or what we call the SF-299, in 2020. Efforts to date, we have a fully executed there is a fully executed interconnection agreement to deliver power via the California Independent Service Operator, sometimes known as CAISO, which manages the flow of electricity on high voltage power lines throughout Nevada and California, with a 2025 delivery date. There's initiated permitting with the BLM with a commitment to schedule, and this has been designated as a federal Fast 41 project. If we could go to the next slide here, this is a little bit of a close-in view. So some project details here. It's approximately 2,500 acres to be developed in the out of the 5131 that have been applied for. It would connect to the Valley Electric Association's existing 230 Innovation Substation in Nye County. We're looking at the project being 300 megawatts with a battery energy storage system, and it's equivalent to about 80,000 homes of energy use per year. Access is along US Route 95, and the GenTie in blue there, you can see, is about 5.4 mile single or double circuit 230 transmission line from the on-site project substation to the Grid Alliance 230 Innovation Substation in Nye County, located within existing transmission corridors and adjacent to the existing transmission line. So as far as habitat goes, everything will be compacted together. So now we're on to desert tortoise background. U.S. Fish and Wildlife designated critical habitat, that's shown here in green. U.S. Fish and Wildlife Priority 1 connectivity area is shown in blue. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Priority 2 connectivity area is shown in yellow. And the Bonanza application is the area with the black star to the west of Indian Springs. So it's in Priority 1 connectivity habitat. If we could go to the next slide, please. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife identified certain BLM variance lands as Priority 1 or Priority 2 connectivity areas as described in the solar PEIS. Priority 1 connectivity areas are where least cost corridor modeling identified potential habitat linkages between existing conservation areas that have the best chance of sustainability connectivity for desert tortoise populations. Priority 1 designation does not prohibit the BLM from issuing land use authorizations such as right-of-ways. Appendix D of the preliminary plan of development describes our current knowledge of desert tortoise occurrence within the application area. And the BLM is conducting a connectivity model with the University of Nevada, Reno to better understand the functioning of habitat linkages in this area. We're also working with Fish and Wildlife and the DTRO on those efforts, and Mr. Mark Slaughter, who is on the call today. If we go to the next slide, please. Next steps are the variance process, which we're currently in. If BLM approves, then it would initiate the NEPA process. That would be conducting environmental surveys and impact analysis, biological resources, cultural resources, jurisdictional delineation, visual resources, assessment and simulations, and then some public involvement also happens in the NEPA process, obviously through through scoping, the DEIS, and all the way up to an FEIS, should we move from variance. Anticipated permits and authorizations needed. Federal would be the NEPA, National Environmental Policy Act. That would be a record of decision. Possibly a 404 Clean Water Act if regulated waters are present. We haven't gotten to that yet. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service biological opinion and incidental take authorization under the Endangered Species Act. That would be needed. And a National Historic Preservation Act under Section 106. From the state, the Nevada Utility Environmental Protection Act permit to construct would be needed. An encroachment permit for project access road to the US 95. The Nevada Department of Transportation would be that permit. Locally, Clark County special use permit, Nye County special use permit, building permits and grading permits would be needed. These are just a list of some of the anticipated permits. They may not be all of them. So if you see or recognize something that's missing, we're just trying to highlight the major permits that we're aware of. If we could go to the next slide, preliminary construction schedule, if this were to be approved through the variance, would start in April of 24 with a duration of about 20 months, and commercial operation date of December 2025 is the goal here to let the public know what that goal is. Next slide, please. Question and answer session. You can type a question into the question Q&A feature. That's down at the bottom of your screen. There's a Q&A area down there. I see that folks have already started populating that area. If you are calling in, please press *9 and raise your hand. The host will unmute you when it is your turn to ask a question. When there are no new unique questions, we will transition into the public input session. Would we like to go to the next screen, or should we stay here and answer some questions?
We'll leave this up as you walk folks, as you review the Q&A box there. We'll keep this slide up. It doesn't look like we have anybody on the phone. Jonathan, that show up differently if there was somebody on the phone. It's not looking like anybody called in. So we've just got folks right now who can drop their questions into the Q&A feature.
Yes, and if anybody's having trouble getting to the Q&A, or it should be at the bottom of your screen. There should be a section down there that has participants, Q&A, chat, screen share, record, reactions, and apps. So there should be some stuff going on down there for you for Q&A questions, because I see it looks like Kevin Emmerich and Laura found it. So Kevin's got the first 4 questions. Will water be trucked in, or will you try to use wells? If trucked in, where would it come from? We don't know. We're not at that point, Kevin. That'll be, if this gets past variance, that question will be would be determined in the variance process. Looks like Jonathan has an additional information on that.
Oh, no, sorry. I was just indicating that you're answering that live.
Oh, thank you. I misspoke there. Thank you. So, Kevin, their next question is, will there be a plan amendment, or there will be a plan amendment, Kevin, that has been decided if variance is successful, this will be a plan amendment level EIS. How long will the UNR study take? It's been in process for a while. We're looking to have a meeting here in September, and we'll get more data then. It's in draft. We've done some modeling. We've seen some modeling. We've got to look at that now with the subject matter experts like Mr. Slaughter and the DTRO, and see where connectivity is and how it's affected, and if there's opportunity there. So that study will be made final at some point. But right now I want to say we're right around halfway, or maybe just a little bit past halfway on that study. And never done one of these studies before, Kevin, so I'm really unclear how long these things take. It'll take as long as it needs to. From Laura, how will you mitigate blocking 2,500 acres of priority 1 tortoise linkage corridor? This is a large row right away. Laura, that will have to be discussed in the NEPA document. This is variance. It's the tortoise data will come into play here. Fish and wildlife will come into play. Culverts will come into play. There'll be a lot of information, obviously, about desert tortoise priority 1 habitat and what's existing versus how to improve it and move forward. So those are all NEPA type events. They're not part of the variance process, other than identifying this issue and presenting it up to management that we have this issue and that we're looking into it. And these are some of the early findings that we have in the final report. Let's see here. Where am I? Is Grid Alliance line being used? Is it a 230 kV? Does it need upgrading? It'll be used. They mentioned that they have the line has capacity at the innovation substation, so it is the Grid Alliance line that they would be plugging into. It's a KISO line. That power goes to both Nevada and California. So unaware if it needs upgrading at this time. We haven't been notified by Grid Alliance. If that's true, again, this is just variance. We're very early into those stages. Carl, how is it that habitat destruction can be called renewable? We'll make an assessment of the habitat in this area, and the project is renewable energy. So I'm not, that's about the best I can answer that question, Carl. We'll probably have some updated information for you if we make it to NEPA on that point. Hello, I am the founder of the Goddess Temple in Cactus Springs. Well, hello. I've seen that many times. The solar installment will be a big disturbance for our temple, which was founded in 1992. If we move past into the NEPA, we'll be doing social and economic justice. We'll be very interested in talking to you about the disturbance and if it's mitigatable, and how we can come together on those discussions. For right now, it's in this variance process. We'll add that information that there could be a potential impact there. From Reverend Marie, what does non-trigger compliance mean? I'm hearing that the wildlife conversation is not considered is not in consideration to BLM as far as releasing the land for use. Mark, can I bring you online to answer this? This has to do with wildlife conservation question.
I unmuted?
Thanks,
Yeah,
Mark.
what was the question again?
The question is, what does non-trigger compliance mean? I am hearing that the wildlife conservation is not in consideration to BLM as far as releasing the land for use.
So I'm not sure, I've never heard non-trigger compliance before, but I will tell you this, that the project will get a very lengthy review from both wildlife issues, especially tortoise connectivity, as Greg has alluded to, and also any impacts to migratory birds and any other sensitive species that are located within that area. So through the NEPA process, when we get to that point, it will have an extensive review on wildlife and any type of mitigation required to minimize those impacts.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mark. And if this isn't answering your question to the fullest, if you could email us what you're looking for, we'd be glad to get back to you offline to further understand the comment here and to address it properly. Let's see, is this approved? If this is approved, will the rest of the surrounding land be protected from more developers, or will BLM lease to additional companies in this area too? We're currently looking at this being a plan amendment that closes the area to future development. That is a decision of the field manager, Shauna, and Nick Pay, who is also online. That's being a little pre-decisional, so we haven't reached that stage yet, but that's some of the discussions we're having in the background. We recognize the cumulative, the direct, indirect, and cumulative impacts. So thank you for your question. Kevin, hello. Would EDF like to answer the question about water use? I think it's really early. Levi, do you guys have any water use stuff that you've tried to figure out yet?
No, we're currently looking at the options. It is early stage, so we're trying to get that nailed down.
And this is Brian. So I would refer you back to an appendix with the plan of development. Table 3 in Appendix J describes a potential construction-oriented consumption of water and a preliminary bit of information about operational consumption of water. So please do look at the 7 or 8 appendices that are all available for your review and input through September 22nd. And one of them is a water impact analysis document.
Thank you, Brian, and thank you, Levi, for answering those questions. How long do the solar panels last? Are they recyclable? Yes, they are recyclable. Some of the solar panel companies have recyclable programs where they accept broken panels and old panels back. Other solar companies that make panels have a similar type of recycling programs, and they last, or they have about a 25-year warranty. A 30-year warranty is what they're currently up to. We grant for 30 years. What often happens if a solar panel is not operating up to spec, they'll replace that panel because they're constantly monitoring the field to make sure that it's putting out the proper megawatts, because you don't want too little, or you can get in trouble with the utility and your power purchase agreement, or you don't want too much because then you're just giving away energy. So it's very, very well monitored. Genevieve, hello again. Can you put the installation further away from us, more miles down the road? It's what we're doing is we're responding to, the BLM is responding to an application submitted by the applicant. The BLM doesn't get to decide necessarily where the projects go. That would be collusional for us. So we have this comment captured. If this gets past variance, that's kind of a NEPA alternative on whether or not it can be placed further down, and a lot of information on the tortoise priority 1 habitat and tortoise areas would be taken into account. So there's all those possibilities in the range of alternatives, but that's very much a NEPA function. Lucy, can you send your presentation to us via email? Brian, could you answer that for me, please?
This presentation that we're going through tonight, it was posted on the e-planning, the project website just a couple hours ago. So if you previously had that link to the website, all you have to do is go back to it now and you'll find this presentation is already posted there. If it turns out you didn't have the link to the website, please make sure we get your email address and we can provide it to you so that you can get this and all the other information, including the plan of development, the variance report, and 8 appendices are all available for you to read and provide us input by September 22nd.
Thank you, Brian. Kevin Emmerich, will you consider an ACEC alternative to the protected desert tortoise connectivity? That would mean no solar projects. There's other ways to protect that by changing land status. An ACEC is one mechanism, but an ACEC requires RNI values and a bunch of other metrics in order to become an area of critical environmental concern, which is what ACEC stands for. That could be looked at. If we pass the variance process, we'll work very close with Southern Nevada as the best possible mechanism to close down the area if that's the direction that the authorized officers have chosen, without becoming pre-decisional or trying to get ahead of where we're at right now. So you know, patience is great. If we come out of this process, then we'll have plenty of time to have those conversations. But thank you very much for that, Kevin. That's a great comment. This is about people not tortoises, but about people in a sacred space. Many thousands of people have come to the temple to mediate and pray over the decades. We have been there. Understood. Thank you very much for that comment that you're letting us know about this area for you. Appreciate that. Philip, Frank, what entity is going to utilize the majority of energy for selling to their customers? So you mean the power purchase agreement is what I'm taking from this. So the power could end up going to sold to California, but staying in Nevada. So it's power created in a location doesn't show up on a transmission line as a certain color, which you can watch where it goes. So there's a certain percentage of energy that is sent over to California, but the energy produced at this location could possibly end up staying in Nevada for Nevada use. So it's a little bit of a hard concept to explain, but hopefully I've explained that fairly well for you. So I'm looking for more Q&A. If anybody would like to type in some Q&A, I'll give it a moment or two. And if not, then we'll move into the transition into the public input session. Kevin, thank you. So there is probably no green link option due to the distance to substations. That's very correct, Kevin. The nearest substation that Greenlink would have to this would probably be the Amargosa substation. It could be backwards all the way to Harry Allen, but I doubt it. So yes, there are no other entry points that are being looked at for connectivity or connection or queue positions for an interconnect. So interconnects are part of the applicant's process, and then they determine where the interconnection through working with the utility, if they're able to interconnect there. That's how that process works. It's not a BLM BLM doesn't get to say, you get to interconnect here and you get to interconnect over there. We have no authority in that realm. Excuse me. So I've answered 17 questions. We're open still for Q&A if anybody would like to type in. Give it a minute or two to make sure I'm giving a fair shot to folks that are slow like myself on a keyboard. It takes me forever to type in a question, and I just can't get in. Karen, good, thank you. DTRO is planning to call Nevada. DTO is planning to call Nevada current tortoise habitat and population recovery projects done by 2027. Commercial operation for Bonanza's business model would begin in 2024. Other long-term tracking on tortoise research will probably continue. Is there foreseeable end of proposals for solar large array infrastructure as the PV tech and engineering bypass the older model infrastructure? Yes, there's a foreseeable end to proposals due to cumulative impacts, that you reach a balancing point that where the land can just not sustain any more projects due to the multiple use mandate that we have at the BLM. So it's not all about tortoise. It's not all about, we got to think about mining, recreation, and a bunch of other potential impacts to folks that have been mentioned here before. So that may be what the DTRO is planning. I don't know. I can't speak for them. But as far as projects go, Southern Nevada is a very popular location for projects. So that's about as best as I can answer that for you, Karen. Philip, I was told that the majority of energy is already contracted for and it will be going to California. Okay. Will you please be more forthcoming with factual information? I don't know where it's going, honest, Phil. I really don't. It may be going to California through CAISO. I don't think it was me who said that the majority of energy was already contracted for. So,
Greg, do you want me to jump in on that?
yeah, could you please?
Sure, because I've probably done the most talking out there in the community, so it may have been a misinterpretation of something that I said. We don't have a contract for the energy for this project yet. What I said is that locally within Southern Nevada, VEA would be the primary entity that we would contract for if the energy was going to stay, contracted locally. But it was more likely, since it's part of the overall CAISO system, that an entity in California would be contracting for the energy. That said, as you described, Greg, pretty well, the energy is essentially a pool, right? So VEA is also part of that pool. They have the ability to contract for energy from Nevada or California, just as any other entity in the CAISO system does as well. The electrons from the project basically stay more locally on the system, but the way that energy wheeling essentially works is that anybody in the larger pool can purchase a portion of that pool for their use in their area. So hopefully that helps explain that a little bit more.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much. And Philip, if you'd like additional information that we could help provide you, please contact us. We'd be more than happy to make sure that we're getting the most factual information to you. Well, hello. Pardon me if you've already answered this. I'm also with the Goddess Temple, and I'm unclear about how this project would impact the water of Cactus Springs. Is this part of the study yet to be determined? Yes, it's part of a study yet to be determined. I'm unaware of how it would impact, if at all, Cactus Springs. That's a great part of the NEPA process to look at the impacts on whether we need monitoring wells there to determine if there's any impact to that spring. So it's an undetermined variable right now. At the variance stage, we're so high level with stuff that this is not the NEPA process. So the NEPA process is where that all comes out, and the DEI, the draft environmental impact statement, Mary, is where that information would clearly be described in to the best of our ability. And during the scoping process, we'll add the question, we'll add it to our record now, but if you bring it up again in scoping process, that'll just make sure that we have that on record so that we can look into that as part of the NEPA process. So thank you very much for that that comment. That's excellent. Where are the materials? Where are the materials coming from? Suppliers to be constructed for the solar farm? Are they? You know, I don't know. There are incentives that are out there for folks that are using Made in America, Canada, Mexico as part of legislation acts that have been passed. It's not up to us where the manufactured parts come from. And I'm not even sure that the company that's pretty far down the road has an idea where that is coming from at this point. But that's a great NEPA question. If we make it to NEPA, that could be a part of the NEPA question to articulate, because there are several different forms of photovoltaic. There's thin film, there's crystalline, there's different types. So different types have different looks. That would be an important thing to understand and know. So thank you. What communities has EDF met with so far? Any more plans for meetings? EDF, this is a question for you. I'm not able to answer this.
Yeah, thanks for the question. We're happy to meet with any communities that would like us to come out and meet with them. We have met with the Indian Springs community. We attended the advisory council meeting earlier this year, and then just recently, within the last couple of weeks, we held a meeting in Indian Springs for anybody to come and attend and learn more about the project. Like I said, if you're have a location you'd like us to come out to and do a meeting with folks, we're happy to do that.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Hi, Philip. Where will the majority of solar panels be made? I don't know. That's up to the applicant, and I don't even think they know at this point. There's so many different variations of solar panels out there, and where they're made, and incentives for buying US that are in congressional acts are out there. So we're talking, if this project makes it through variance and into NEPA, we're talking a few years down the road that we could have a major change in distribution networks. If it's real time and right now, then we might be able to answer that question, but it's often something that isn't decided upon until closer to a decision, if they're fortunate to reach that milestone. So that's the honest answer of
Yeah,
where.
and Greg, I can just confirm that that's accurate
Yeah.
for how we're approaching the project.
Thank you, appreciate it. That's the applicant. So yeah, is BLM planning on mineral right segregation soon? Yes, absolutely.
And just to expand on Greg's very short answer to that, what it does is it segregates the land for 2 years to afford us the space to do the analysis and continue to process the application. So it's got a 2-year time frame to the segregation, so that there aren't additional what we call encumbrances that kind of muddle up the analysis. If more people put down right-of-way applications or mining claims or other things while we're evaluating this proposal, it kind of muddles the water for us to evaluate it. So it gives us a 2-year window to do that.
It's the orderly administration of the application. So yes, absolutely. That's a standard operating procedure. Have you been in contact with Nye County regarding discussion on crossing county easements? That would be a question for Nick Pay. If you could please, sir, have you had a chance to talk to Nye County?
Sorry, I don't know where my mute button is.
Thanks, Nick.
This project is early enough in the process. I'm not entirely sure what Nye County easements you're talking about. I mean, it does cross into Nye County, and there will be a conversation with Nye County at some point, but I don't believe that there are any actual easements or rights of ways that Nye County has that would be directly affected.
Yeah, and Greg, if you don't mind me jumping in there as well, I can mention that we have met with Nye County to brief them on the project. And we haven't identified any easements that we would need from the county other than the BLM easement. But we're always, if there are other permits or approvals that are identified, then we will be open to seeking them.
Yeah, fantastic question. That's really good stuff. So we've got 25 questions that have been answered, none dismissed, and we've got an open list there. I'll give it a few more minutes before we go into public input session that's available to everyone. I have one hand raised. I think that's Philip. I imagine that's for the public input session. Hopefully I'm correct on that. So that's how we'll identify you for the public input session. Oh, good. Some more questions. How will the godless or goddess temple be protected from fugitive dust? Well, fugitive dust is controlled by palliatives and water. If it requires us having a PM10 station in that area, oh, you're putting that for EDF. Well, it's the same. I mean, that's the answer, Kevin, is we'll look at fugitive dust in the NEPA section and whether or not that requires a PM10 station within the area. So that would be a mitigation measure to determine the effect. Would you place the email? Would you place the email we are to send more questions, concerns about how it affect the temple, wildlife, and the spring? Yes, we have that, I believe, on the next slide. Is that true, Brian?
The next slide will be the public input session. So I'm not sure if I'm understanding the question.
The question is they want the email address to send questions to. So we need to make sure that we put somewhere in
our
chat
email address. Okay.
Yes, yeah, so that they can send us an email and asking a question, and we can get back to them. You know, off table. They may have questions that they wish to table and ask us afterwards. So that's fantastic.
I've dropped it in the chat, and it just would be a reminder that if the questions are about impacts to certain resources, certain cultural, natural, or even socio resources, we're not going to have the answers at this time. And those are things that we'll take into account if the variance is cleared and we go into the NEPA process next year. So right now, the information we have available is available online in the form of a preliminary plan of development, a variance factors report, and 8 appendices for you to take a look at. And that may help you in understanding what our knowledge of the area is and how that could possibly be impacted should we go into NEPA, and we would be sorting it out in the NEPA process, those impacts.
Yes, but please still email us, and if we can answer the question, we will. If we can't, we'll also say that we don't have that information yet, but we will get back to you. We're not going to just leave you out there submitting a question and wondering why we've never gotten back to you. So please, if you do, we are very proactive on making sure that we're responsive. Why does the installation have to be between Indian Springs and Cactus Springs? It's an open area that's available for solar from the solar PEIS, and it was applied for in an application through the 299. There's really not a reason why necessarily. Levi can answer this question probably better than I.
I just wanted to clarify and make sure, because there was another location proposed at one time that was between the community of Indian Springs and Cactus Springs. This is not that location. This is another 1.5 miles to the west of Cactus Springs.
Okay, thank you. And we can supply you a map, an exact map. If you just send us an email, we'll send you an exact map that's really gives you a good location. Hi, Kevin. Are you aware that the project will be visible from a long distance from the community of Cold Creek? Has EDF met with them? Some are worried. I'm not aware if we've met with Cold Creek. EDF, have you met with the folks in Cold Creek? We're aware that you can see stuff from long distances. So, but to answer the Cold Creek question, Devin?
No, we haven't met with Cold Creek. Like I said, we'd be happy to go out there and meet with them if they're interested. We have done a view shed analysis, and that was beyond the edge of what was shown as visible, but the view shed analysis doesn't always, represent exact reality. So we'd be happy to look at that a little bit more.
So the answer, Kevin, is that they'll be happy to go out there and meet with the folks out there if something can be set up. But we have that in our record here, and we will look to the applicant to make sure that that they are they take that into consideration. The chat is disabled. We cannot see the email. How can we find information you're saying is online? Can you please tell us the website? The chat is disabled, Jonathan?
And while Jonathan's looking into that, on the last slide that we're going to show tonight, we'll show again the email address where you can send emails to, and we're also going to show you again the website on the last slide after the end of the public input session. So we're not going to let you go without not knowing where to email to and not knowing the hyperlink to the project website if you've not already seen the project website, because we want to make sure you can find it, because that's where there's the preliminary plan of development and 8 appendices and the variance report, which are open to public comment until September 22nd.
And I just put the email address in a chat that everyone can see. I think when Brian put it in there, it was defaulted to just hosts and panelists.
Yeah,
but again,
Bonanza
like Brian
Solar at
mentioned,
blm.gov. And I see the.
and as Brian mentioned, it will be on the last slide.
Yeah, we'll make sure that you guys get it. Absolutely, and have plenty of time to copy it down or screenshot it or whatever you need to do. Glad to hear that. Okay, glad to hear that too. Thank you very much. How close is the solar project going to be constructed to Highway 95? Is there a set? Yes, there's a setback from the highway easement, and there's also consideration for Tortoise being able to access. So there's the setback is an alternative that is still under development, and in the variance process, it's a very loose determination of the project within the 5,000 acres that the 2,500 acres would be needed for the 300 megawatts. So it's a, we could give you a number, but it probably wouldn't be hold true due to more information needed and to make sure that that things are exactly the way they need to be for a good range of alternatives. So I'd hate to try to answer that question at this time,
So
but it's a great question.
This is Brian. I think what also is helpful is when you look at the plan of development, there has not been any engineered design started for this project yet. In other words, where would these things lay out on the land? We're at 0% right now design, and you'll see that when you look at the plan of development and the illustrations that are in it, that right now EDF has not done the engineer work yet. And because that's not the stage of the project that we're at yet. We're not in engineering just yet and exactly how the project would lay out on the land.
Yeah, and these are fantastic questions, folks. Really, really good stuff. So really appreciate the questions that you've provided so far. That is very, very helpful for understanding, and your input is greatly appreciated. So I'd just like to make sure I mention you. I'm looking for any questions and answers in the Q&A before I open it to the public input session. We have a timer on the input session, so you get 2 minutes to have that time. I imagine there's a bunch of information on the next slide, so I'll probably try not to guess what's on the next slide, although I've already seen it. Are there any known toxic adverse effects to human health? None that we're aware of. That's a great question. There's nothing that we're aware of. There's plenty of solar farms throughout the U.S. on both private and public lands, and I'm not aware of an impact. There's also solar on rooftops and parking structures and buildings. While it's only been around for about 10 or 12 years, we have no indication of any impacts at this time. But that's part of the human environment that would be part of the NEPA process to make sure that it is fully analyzed. I mean, we even have calculators and stuff with solar panels and watches. Well, watches used to have solar panels on them. I had one once. I'm not sure where it came from though. All right. 33 answered questions. We're doing great. I'll just give it a minute or two to. We're doing just fine on time. All right, let's travel to the next slide. 17. Took forever to get there, huh? Input should be substantive in nature, not merely I support or I oppose this application. Substantive, if I could only say that word, substantive comments should be focused on concerns within the responsibility of the BLM and not issues that are not, such as requiring rooftop solar on new buildings, solar shade canopies over parking lots, etc. We don't do that kind of stuff. Most valuable input. Here's an example of how do you use the application area, i.e. citing rock hounding, OHV use. What do you know about the cultural or natural resources in the application? Those are great questions. So public input session continue. Each speaker will have 2 minutes, up to 2 minutes. If you are calling in, please raise your hand by pressing *9. If you're on a phone, I don't believe we have any phone participants. This is an informational session is scheduled until 8. Please be respectful of all parties on the call, please. So with that, we'll open it up to the ability to raise a hand, and then we'll bring you in and unmute you and give you 2 minutes opportunity to hear what you have to say here on this project. So Philip has been first for quite a while, so let's get Philip his opportunity.
Yes. Can you hear me all right?
Absolutely. Thank you very
Oh.
much.
Okay. One of the concerns that a lot of the folks that live out here and have for a long time is we have seen the results of the first solar panel the system that has impacted Boulder City, north of Las Vegas, out by Apex. You get one, the next thing you know, you get 2, 3, 4. Now I understand that the BLM is designated, I'm not sure if this is the right terminology, but a great deal of land for variance for this, that you can actually ask for a variance from here all the way to Beatty. As a matter of fact, that's what it was mentioned. And that's what we are concerned about. And there was a question somebody called in about what are the chances of getting more of these, which is an extreme concern. We get one, you get 2, 3, 4. So what are the chances of that taking place?
Well, the response to that is that if this is a plan amendment level document and we block off the area from future development, that would be the answer, that there would be no further development of solar in this area. And as I mentioned before, solar in Southern Nevada is becoming a cumulative impact. We're doing some stuff up in Amargosa Valley that could be a potential for solar development in the future. And then as you come out of Southern Nevada, there's more and more interest to the north in the Battle Mountain District. You've probably heard of the Esmeralda project up there.
Absolutely. We're
That's
talking that there's with what's going on down here, you're looking at 50,000 acres of land, of Nevada land. And I know for a fact because they need it. California's gonna end up with it all, most of it.
Um,
There's just no, I mean, we can beat around the bush, sir, but I know that's what it's gonna end up. They're gonna end up, they're gonna end up with most of it.
yeah, well, I thank you for your comment very much, and we'll make sure we disclose the
Yeah.
stuff in the NEPA document. But yeah, we do see a lot of interest further to the north. I manage the Greenlink project, the Greenlink West project, and Greenlink North, and I know you've probably heard of those projects. So,
Absolutely.
yeah. So great. Thank you very much.
Okay, you're welcome. Thank you.
Kevin, you're up next.
Hello, thank you. Thanks for having this meeting. It's been informative. As you all know, we're based in Range Watch. We follow large-scale solar projects. What I want to comment on is why this desert tortoise area is so important, and why, if you do a plan amendment, or even wait till you revise all the RMPs, this is a better idea. This is a really highly important connectivity area. To the south, it's blocked off by Las Vegas and that area. And so it's considered this very narrow pinch point, you call it least cost corridor, that connects the Las Vegas Valley or Desert Tortoise to the Amargosa Valley and the Pahrump Valley. And because of all of the urbanization and development to the south, this is really the only good genetic corridor that's going to be left. You say we're going to develop 2,500 acres and we'll protect everything else. That's still a substantial amount of land that's going to be bulldozed and destroyed. You mow the vegetation and let them back in. You don't even know how successful the Gemini solar project's going to be. And you've allowed that vegetation mowing to happen there. And the plan is to release the tortoises back on the site. But this is a very important area, and the BLM should at least consider the ACEC as an alternative to the solar project. There's a lot of land out there being considered for solar, and EDF is a giant company. They have a lot of projects. They're making a lot of development all over the world. They don't have to help drive the desert tortoise to extinction. That's my first comment. I'm going to make a second comment a little bit later after everyone else about water, if that's okay. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you, Kevin, for being cognizant of your 2 minutes, and we'll see if we've got some other comments here. Please raise your hand if you'd like to make a public comment. Okay, we've got a couple hands up. Let's go to the next. I believe that's Fender, Michael.
I think it's Ann McPherson.
Oh, Ann McPherson has a hand up. Is that true? Let's go to Ann McPherson.
I don't have my hand up, but it came up on Zoom to unmute, but I did not raise my hand.
Hi, Ann.
Okay, sorry about
Hi.
that.
Thank you.
We'll go to Michael Fender. I'll unmute you next.
You ready?
Yes,
Yep.
can hear you. Thank you.
Okay, how you doing? Well, I haven't lived out here for very long, but I have seen quite a bit of progress in the last few years when I have been driving back and forth through the desert. At one point, solar farms were a novelty. Within the last 15 to 20 years, case in point, you have the one that's just on the very west side going into basically on the other side of Primm, and then you have the one on the north side of up Highway 95 outside of Tonopah. Those are just kind of novelty projects to a certain degree. And maybe it might have been good at the time when they did this PEIS, when they first started this project way before 2012. But when you start looking at the end results here, there are too many applications being put in to use so many pieces of land along our major highways, our arteries to our cities and towns, that what we're going to see are junkyards alongside the highway. and I hate to say junkyards because basically it's glass and metal, and they do have a purpose, but this purpose is, it will actually look kind of unhealthy, sort of. You cannot hide these projects behind the mesquite. Mesquite does not grow very tall. So what I'm getting at is the plans are way too many, and it's just going to consume so much land, and it's a disaster to the view, to the desert, and to the animals that live here, which are many. And of course, I'm leaning right with Kevin. I'm on his side because I live in Pahrump, and so I have to see this. Anyway, you take care of yourself. Thanks for the time.
Thank you very much for that. Appreciate your input. Reverend Marie Sharp.
Yes, hello, thank you. I just like to follow up a little bit on what was said about the desert tortoises and the wildlife. There only being a certain swath in which the wildlife can maintain their living. This project being so close to 95, it pushes them both up the hill, but also towards the highway. And we see many animals perish by this highway already. So taking up more space in between Indian Springs and Cactus Springs, that is one more development that continuously pushes the wildlife towards the road, which many of them, are harmed or killed. And it also does very much affect how people visit this temple and their experience here. People come here for spiritual retreats. Shoshone land. There is an essence of spirituality that I really think should be considered. So thank you very much.
Appreciate that. Thank you. I believe Laura Cunningham is next.
Hi, yeah, Laura Cunningham, resident of Beatty since 2002, and I'm actually a longtime worshiper at the Goddess Temple in Cactus Springs, the Sekhmet Temple. So I do think this solar project is near enough that it could have a big impact on the viewscape, the desert that's important to this area. So I hope that the cultural value of the Goddess Temple could be taken into account in the variance process. And if it passes the variance test, I hope that the cultural values of the Goddess Temple would be taken into account during NEPA. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Don't see any other further hands up. We'll give it a couple minutes in case somebody decides they want to make a public comment. Kevin?
Hello, thank you again. I did want to make an additional comment about the water. This is a particularly sensitive area for water use. And as you know, solar projects have a demand requirement to use water to mitigate dust for construction. There depends on the size of the project. The really big ones can use up to 1,000 acre feet. It could be 300 to 400 acre feet. This is a concern. I discussed this with the Fish and Wildlife Service, and they told me that EDF informed them that they would get the water outside of the area. But in this meeting tonight, EDF is still considering a well. I think that's really important because the Cactus Springs area does have a really small spring network and a unique hydrology that could really be impacted. But even more significant than that is that this area is considered a major hydrological arm to feed the Devil's Hole area. And so that's why the Fish and Wildlife Service is really concerned about this, because as you know, the Devil's Hole pupfish, well, they're the first endangered species in the United States. If this project is approved and they're allowed to take water out of the aquifer, that could potentially affect this species here. So it's curious to me that EDF didn't want to say whether they're going to bring the water in or not. That's probably because they don't know where they're going to get it. Because water is really a problem out here. That Indian Springs Basin is really overdrafted, and it's just not safe to play around with it. Thank you once again. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Kevin. Would there be anybody else out there of our 13 attendees who would like to have an opportunity to make a public comment? Genevieve?
Yes, thank you. You know, the land at Cactus Springs, for where the temple is actually belongs to the Shoshone, to the Western Shoshone. And I think maybe they ought to be asked for their opinion and permission to be constructing nearby.
Yep. Thank you for your comment. Appreciate that. Was that all you had?
Yes, that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you very much for that comment. Is there anybody else out there who would like an opportunity? All right. If we go to the next slide, we've got Mary would like to make a public comment. Mary, please we'll unmute you here.
Yeah, hi. I hope I don't have
Hi.
too much background noise. This is Mary Claire Stewart, one of the stewards also at the Goddess Temple. And I just want to weigh in publicly to underscore the concerns for the water in a little bit of an appreciation, of course, for the renewable aspects of solar, but also just highlighting because of the unique location of this intended project, a little bit of the robbing Peter to pay Paul in terms of the long-term impact of the water situation, and as already been mentioned, just the unique geography of it. So just wanted to weigh in on that and appreciate the ability to follow up with questions as the study carries on. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that, Mary. Carl it would be next on the docket here.
I just have a comment that this idea that solar panels are green, they're completely dependent on mining. Everything, all of their parts are put together by mining. So sure, when it's operational, it's using the sun, but to manufacture those panels, it all requires mining, which is just devastating to the environment. And then not only just their positioning on the land itself, which just basically destroys the environment. It covers shades that nothing can grow underneath there. They don't want anything growing underneath there. You also have the mining involved in producing it. And you may say that they're recyclable, but we really haven't seen that. So after 25-year life cycle, then you have to do this again. So even if you were to recycle some of those parts, that would require energy also. So either way, we're running up against the wall here. So this is just kicking the can down the road here. Whether we run out of fossil fuels or the metals. I guess my time's up.
Thank you, Carl. If there's nobody else who, you could always come back and put in another public comment if you'd like to finish any of those, your thoughts there. I don't see anyone else applying for. Is there anyone else out there that would like to make a public comment? Okay, Brian, if we could take away that timer, please. So the next slide here is the following documents are available for public review and input at the site located at eplanning.blm.gov, eplanning-UI project, and then that number, and then 510. It's best to take a screenshot of that if you're writing that down. That's another way to do that. Or just send us an email. You'll see an email here for us soon. A preliminary plan of development, current version, August 31, 2022. Appendices on topics including integrated vegetation survey, a desert tortoise survey, a geotechnical review, a visual resource study, and water supply and demand analysis are all available there. Variance factor analysis report, current version is July of 2022. The next slide is where to submit comments. Submit written comments to bonanzasolar@blm.gov by September 22, please. Comments can also be submitted to the BLM Nevada State Office, attention Brian, at 1340 Financial Boulevard, Reno, Nevada 89502. So bonanzasolar@blm.gov is where your comments can be submitted to. We'll be monitoring that for questions also, and make sure that we're getting back to everybody. Next slide. Do we have a next slide, Brian?
I think this is it. I'll go up one, and I think I come back and it's blank. So there we go.
Fantastic. So with that, I see that Philip, Frank, can we bring up the clock again, Brian? Could we please unmute Mr. Philip?
Hello.
Hello, how are you?
Hi. This is just a comment. The other gentleman said something about the viability of solar panels, et cetera, and the impact they have with mining, that sort of thing. And this is just a comment mostly for the people who are listening, and I assume everybody's listening, about our green energy system and what it has caused us. He mentioned something about the solar panels out at Prim, and they mentioned the one up in Tonopah. A lot of people don't know this, but the one at Prim at one time, several years ago, I read in the RJ, was listed as one of the top 10 polluters in the state of California. And people, how could that possibly be? That's because there's a 40-inch natural gas line that goes through there, and it backs that system up to where it runs the generators via natural gas motors, engines that run there. And the one in Tonopah, if you read the history about it, it has failed. NV Energy actually canceled their contract with them. I'm sure you know all this, but I just want people to know that there's some real big problems with this green energy push that we have. California also just recently was having a big problem about what to do with all these solar panels that 20 some years ago that they subsidized by the government too, by the way, that people put on their homes. They have no place to put them. That was in the papers. People need to know about the long-term effects and short-term effects of what this big green energy push. California has shut down San Onofre, a huge nuclear power plant. The one at Diablo Canyon is going to shut down by 24 or 25. And look what they're doing now. They're asking people not to charge their their EV cars. I mean, there are other alternatives that we should look at, I think. Anyway, that's just my comment. It's pretty obvious where I stand, and I really appreciate you allowing folks to comment. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Phil. I appreciate that. We got another comment coming in from Carl.
Well, I'll add on to that, is that the solar industry wouldn't survive if it wasn't subsidized. That's, I mean, that's how this business is run. I mean, that's how the quote unquote renewable energies, it's all through government subsidies. So it's not, even from an economical standpoint, it's not sustainable. And it definitely is not sustainable from an ecological standpoint. So this is, again, is just kicking the can down the road. And so it's probably far more destructive, and I'm not a fossil fuel advocate at all, but to go with solar or wind is not the answer here. I mean, we have to start cutting back. It's not where we get our energy. It's how we're using it, and it's our lifestyle. So I mean, we're just going to have to vastly change our lifestyle, but people don't want to do that, and they're trying. Well, they're not trying to save the planet. They're just, what we're trying to do is save our lifestyle. So, and that's not going to happen. It's period. I don't care how many solar panels you put up or wind turbines. So that's it.
Thank you, Carl. So hopefully everyone was able to get the information and where it's available. And if you have any questions or additional comments that you'd like to present, I'll be on until 8 o'clock this evening. Even if you would like to take a break and then come back because you thought of something, I will be here till 8. But I'd like to thank everybody for a great meeting. We had good attendance and some great questions and some good comments. I will be doing this again tomorrow, same time. So if you'd like to join us tomorrow, that would be that's available to you also. At this point, I'll just wait to see if there's anybody else who has any further comments or questions here for us in the Q&A or in a comment available to you to be put on record. So with that said, there'll be some quiet time, or maybe you need Brian to change the slide to a different slide to see where something is. If you could go up a slide, Brian, that would be great. Thank you. Philip, you can need the clock on again, Brian. Philip, could we release Philip for availability to make a comment?
You hear me okay?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, this is this is just a question that somebody whispered in my ear here just a short time ago, and I think it's viable. This person wanted to know if anybody listening or on the panel would like to see one of these projects next door to their abode, where they live, where they spend the majority of their life. And that's just a question that does not require an answer. That's a rhetorical question. Something to think about for everybody that's involved. But thank you for listening.
Thank you, Philip. Appreciate that.
Yeah, you bet. But
So we're here for the next at least 35 plus minutes. If you all like to ask or put in a public comment or put something in the Q&A, you're more than welcome to. If not, I thank you very, very much for attending this variance public meeting. And like I said, we'll be here. So even if you head out and you think of something, you can come back and we'll put you through. And all this information is available at the BLM e-planning site. So make sure you go there and get the information you might need or want. And if you're not able to do that, please let us know. We'll be more than happy to send that to you directly. Or if one of your friends wasn't able to make the meeting, please have them contact us or come to the site and get the information. We'll have this meeting again tomorrow. So maybe they could join tomorrow. That's available to them also. It's too bad we don't have like approved music that we could pipe in for the next 35 minutes. It's a little awkward. But we did say we'll be here till 8, and that's what we're here till. So, great. Got a hand up.
Yeah.
Yeah, hi. I just had another question about, does the in this variance, is there a consideration, like does the BLM test the land like a Geiger counter for how much radiation is still here from the test site and all of the testing in conjunction to the pollution that will be created by the solar farm? Is that a part of the research in this variance?
That's a great public comment. But so we'll just add that to our public comment.
I see. Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm gonna turn my camera off for folks. I haven't gone anywhere. I just my camera may be it's probably getting tired of looking at me, so I will turn my camera off. But I'm still out here. I can always bring it back and then you can see my nice background if needed. But just monitoring. Looks like we still have 8 attendees with us, in case any of you would like to offer up a Q&A question. We can get into questions and answers, or if you'd like to make a public comment.
Greg, I see a hand raised.
Oh, great, Karen.
Jonathan, can you unmute Karen and see if she has a question or comment?
The mute is on her end, looks like.
Oh, okay, maybe she left her hand up from before.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi. Hi. Just a question. Since you got time, it's kind of a wanderer, but I don't know very much about the engineering and the science of the photovoltaics. So I started reading PV Magazine a while back, and what struck me right from the start was, as a beginner looking at that, every 2 weeks, possibly, sometimes it was even closer together, there was a development in the technology around the world somewhere. Someone had brought up the efficiency of the old technology, and then all of a sudden there were new advances, which I was hoping would make it unnecessary to use thousands of acres. The technology might go forward so quickly that in your lives as engineers and people who are working for the BLM, has it ever occurred that a large plan simply got run over by the technology passing it by? And then what do you do? Do you go to your engineer and say, reconfigure? And how quickly could that be done in real time? Could it be done before ground is broken? Could it be done in the middle of raising a tower? Could it be done? Could people find that we could have like hand size photovoltaic modules where they wouldn't need free unlimited wasteland, to make it efficient? I'm just kind of wondering if time is on our side, the market on our side, that maybe the physical infrastructure that's so destructive doesn't need to be there, might not be needed. That's just my basic question. I'd like to attend tomorrow night too. This has been very interesting. Thank you.
You're welcome, Karen. Thank you for that comment and appreciate that. Well, we have 8 folks out there with a half hour to go. So if you guys can think of anything that you'd like to make a public comment on, or you need to have a question answered, please put that in the Q&A. I believe Brian was going to transition over to our e-planning site so we could just show folks what that looks like. If that's available, Brian, why don't you go ahead and do that?
I can do that. And that way, over the next 2+ weeks, those of you that have additional interest in wanting to read the details that we have available, you can wander your eyes and your computer over to e-planning. It'll take me a second to pull up the e-planning website, and then I'll talk you through how to go to the different pages of it. So hang in there for just a minute while I navigate over to it myself, and then I'll bring it over onto the screen here.
And
So
this is an unplanned event that we're doing for you folks. We have extra time. We're looking to fill some of that time, so it'll be nice for folks to see that and become familiar with what that looks like if you'd like to get into that area. So it's a real nice program that we use and load documents on. So we'll show you that here in just a second. Looks like Brian's bringing that up now.
So we provide everybody the hyperlink, and this is the hyperlink that was in the slide that we were just displaying a little bit ago. It's kind of a crazy, silly address, but we don't indent it. The computer system does for us. So we're only the messengers here on the hyperlink to the website. And when you go there, you go to any standard web page. You start out with the home page, and this is what you would see. This is the home page. And from here, you see some basic information about the commenting period that we're in right now, including our email address here once again. And then if you flip over to the documents tab, You'll see a series of documents there. You flip over to the Maps tab. You'll see a map package available. So I'll flip over to these tabs in just a minute here. And then how to get involved is just a little bit of the same information which you're already aware of today, which again includes the email address where you can send your emails to. And if you want to continue to be on the mailing list for this project, please make sure we have your email address, because we'd prefer to email you future notifications than do it in the mail. So make sure we have your email address on file. So if I flip over to the documents page, what you'll see is a copy of tonight's PowerPoint presentation that we have presented is here at the top under Public Input Session, September 2022. Then we have information on variance and the variance process, including our news release, a illustrative workflow of the variance process, and then the report that was put together by the consultants working with the applicant. This is the variance factors report that Greg was alluding to earlier, that would be forwarded up the food chain to the state director and eventually the director for making a determination of whether or not the project would be accepted or rejected. And then you can see down below under the heading of preliminary plan of development, there is the plan of development there at the top. And then there is appendices A through J that are available for you to read. Maybe you don't want to read the whole thing. I hate to say it, it is over 700 pages in total. So you may not want to read the whole thing. Maybe there's a particular issue or resource or item that you want to look at, like what do we know about the plants out there? That's Appendix E. What do we know a little bit about possible impacts to noise and the soil condition out there and the visual resources? So maybe you'll just take one of the appendices and take a look at it and give us some feedback. So that's kind of how you navigate the website, starting out with the homepage, and then going over on the left side to either look at documents, and it's pretty obvious what the labeling is there and when the documents were published. And then lastly, maps. If you are familiar with Google Earth, which many people are, this is a KMZ file that allows you to use Google Earth and zoom right into the area that we're talking about tonight. Or if alternatively, you don't want to use the Google Earth KMZ file, you can go to this thing called map package. And there are 4 or 5 maps all combined together that you can take a look at that give you a couple different things of interest relative to where this project is located. So that is the website, Greg, in a nutshell, and back to you.
Thank you very much for doing that, Brian. And Brian has obviously full access to e-planning. Some of those icons may not be there, like adding information and that, but the information will all be there as shown. Just some of the tools to add additional information may not be there. So thank you very much for going over that for folks, Brian. They probably may not have seen the availability of that information that we have out there for folks to take a look at. Really appreciate that. I almost feel like the countdown to New Year's. We've got about 20 minutes, 25 minutes. So there's the Bonanza Solar indicator at blm.gov for any submission. We got quite a good crowd out there still with 8 of you. That's great. So I really appreciate y'all showing up on a Wednesday evening. Thank you very much for taking time out of your valuable time to join us for this input. That's really good stuff. So thank you very much. So I'll go ahead and put my camera off again, give my camera a break. If anybody has anything, please raise your hand or put something into the Q&A. That would help us. Looks like we lost somebody else. We're to 7 folks now. our panelists are out there still too. There's 10 of them, so we still have panelists out there in case any of the attendees have a question that I'm not able to answer, but really want to appreciate it. Thank you again, everybody, for attending. Great support and great questions. Just want to remind everybody we're here till 8. I'll stop narrating. Sometimes it's hard to get me to stop talking. See, we have a hand raised.
Greg, we have a hand. Yeah, it's Reverend Sharp. I'll allow her to talk now.
Absolutely. Thank you. Brian, could you put up the timer for us?
I don't know what I did with that. Oh, there it is. Okay. Is she unmuted?
I believe
is,
so.
yeah.
We're working on that. There we are.
Hello,
Hello,
can you hear
how
me?
are you?
Okay.
Yes,
Hi, I'm good. I just had another comment before I sit with all of the things that we've gone over, and I'll be back tomorrow. You know, as one of the resident care tenders of the temple, the highway, the freeway, the base, the test site, there's all manner of like noise pollution here already. So as a place that was created as a sanctuary, as an outpost of peace, I just wanted to emphasize again, the pollution is not just of the air, it's also of sound, you know, and then all of the other items that, you know, issues that everyone brought up as far as wildlife, water quality. So I can't emphasize enough that the need for spaces for quality of life for the wildlife and for the humans that live here. So thank you very much. And I look forward to talking to you tomorrow.
thank you very much. Appreciate that, Reverend Sharp. Kevin, we'll take a comment from you.
Yes, thank you again. Briefly, I wanted to talk about, we recently took a walk out on the site. As you know, we received a lot of rain pretty recently before we had this heat wave. In fact, record-breaking rain. It actually caused some of the Mojave yuccas on the site to bloom, and it's caused a lot of new growth. In fact, it's looking incredibly diverse out there, and it's a lot more than a desert tortoise habitat. The tortoise is just the keystone of the entire package, but there's quite a diverse amount of species out there, including parish club cholla. It's like a cactus garden. We found several species out there. The desert pavements are really old, and it would really be a shame to let the bulldozers run over this particular site. And I want to message to the folks at the Goddess Temple, we're sending you an email. We're going to try to talk to you a little bit more about this. Thank you again.
Thank you, Kevin. I still hear Kevin out there, did we? Okay, there we go. Thank you.
Only going to change the slide to the first one so that I don't burn everybody's eyeballs out by having the same slide on the screen the whole time. So apologize.
Folks, it's 7:50. We got about 10 minutes left until 8 o'clock. I just wanted to remind you that we are here and available till 8 o'clock. So we got about 10 minutes left if there's anything you'd like to ask us or put in a comment. Again, we'll be on until 8. Thank you.